Hi guys, my name's Veronica and I'm wearing the same thing that I wore in my last video because I'm filming it right after my last video. Yeah. Well, these topics are directly related and so I figured I'd film them at the same time, and now I'm realizing that I should have filmed this video before the other one because the last video I just filmed was my top 14 of 2014, and now I'm telling you my top 10 most disappointing books of 2014, which is not an exciting subject because it's not going to make me happy, it's going to make me angry, but hey, it is okay because you need to know about it, alright? So let's get started. Now before I start, I would like to underline a word in the title of this video and remind you that these are the most disappointing books of 2014. Not necessarily the worst books that I read. I can tell you for sure that the first 3 books on this list, I gave 4 stars. So it doesn't mean they were a bad book. It means that they didn't meet my expectations and I was disappointed by how I felt about them. Okay? Alright, so on that note, let's get started with number 10, which was the least disappointing of my most disappointing books. And that one, I hate to say, was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I'm giving it a moment so you can gasp and get angry at me, I understand. I did give this book 4 stars. But the reason it disappointed me is because I wanted to give it 5 stars. I read it after I read Eleanor and Park, and I was so in love with Rainbow Rowell at that point that I just knew Fangirl was going to be the best thing ever because everybody raves about it and everyone's like, well, she's a fangirl just like us and that's totally the life I live. And that was not the life I live. I don't know what fangirl life y'all are living, but it was not the same one that I live. Cass's fangirl life is not my fangirl life. Okay, the antisocial part, that's definitely me. But the getting a boyfriend part, that's not me. The writing fan fiction, that's not me. I'm going to be perfectly honest, I hate fan fiction. The going to get books when they come out, that's not me because, hello, last time I checked, we were antisocial. I don't go to bookstores that frequently because I don't even like to talk to the people at bookstores. The most relatable thing, I even said this on Goodreads, the most relatable thing that Kath did the whole entire book was run from the library to her dorm room with her finger right above the call button so that she could call 911 when somebody attacked her. That was the most relatable thing she did the whole entire time because that is so me. So I hate to hate on this book. It was an enjoyable book. I did enjoy it a lot. I did like the love interest, and I did like Kath sometimes. Sometimes I really hated Kath, let's be honest. So overall, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the love interest. I enjoyed the fangirl aspects. But I was let down because I was expecting it to be so relatable and just so wonderful and so perfect, and I was going to think it was like a 10-star book out of 5, and it just wasn't that. We're off to a great start because number 10 was a book that I know every single one of you probably loves, and I just bashed it in big time, but hey, guess what? Number 9 is a book that I'm certain even more of you love, probably even more than you love Fangirl, and I'm going to bash it even more. Number 9 is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. John, if you happen to be watching this, I love you to pieces, okay? You and me are homies. I love you. I love Hank. I love watching you on YouTube. The Fault in Our Stars was not my favorite thing in the world. I gave it 4 stars. But again, I thought it would be like 50 stars out of 5. And it wasn't. Because I read it and I went, so what? And I didn't want to read it in the first place because it was so popular, and I hate reading things that are really popular. If they're popular within the booktube community, that is fine. If they're like popular at my school, if I walk down the hallway and the really annoying girls that are wearing their white high-top Chucks with their crop tops and their Starbucks, if they're walking with The Fault in Our Stars in their hand, when that happens, when those type of girls are carrying books, I don't want to read them. I don't. It's like this just weird aversion. It's like innate almost. If something is that popular, I don't want to be about it. But somebody forced me to read it. I read it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I didn't cry, and I wasn't blown out of the water. And that is why I was disappointed by it. Though I am planning on rereading it someday when I don't have that kind of bias about it, because this time I definitely had that bias because of the whole common white girl, like, thing that was attached. Like, 20 years down the road, when I work somewhere where there's not, like, 500 common white girls walking around the hallways with books in their hands, maybe then I will reread it and form a new opinion of it. Okay, number 8 is another book that I'm sure a lot of you enjoyed, and I'm gonna take a guess that a lot of you read, because it was a Booksplosion Book of the Month for June. However, I do know that Reagan from Peruse Project also noted that this book was overhyped. So I know I'm not alone in this one. And that book was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I liked this book. I also gave this book 4 stars. The writing style of this book made me uncomfortable at points because it's too metaphoric almost, which left me kind of confused sometimes. Also, there's like 4 main characters. I related to one of them. The other 3 I had no care for whatsoever. Even the very main character, like, never even cared about her. Not at all. And then the plot twist that's supposed to be so was like, oh. Like, that was it for me. I didn't feel a whole lot of bang! I just felt a little bit of a poke with a tiny little needle. Like, that was it. That was all. That was all I really felt. Number 7 on this list is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. My best friend, who also reads a lot, so I really respect her opinion when it comes to books, read this book in 2 days and was like, Ver, you have got to read this book. It's the best book I've ever read. And I'm like, whoa, the best book she's ever read. It's got to be phenomenal. And then the movie was coming out, and everybody's like, Gone Girl! And I'm like, okay. So I pick it up, and I spend 2 weeks on the first 100 pages. Holy crap. I was so bored. I was like, and then I'd wake up, I'd read a couple more pages, and I'd go to sleep again. That's how I felt when I was reading it. And then it hits like part 2, which I don't even know where part 2 is in accordance to percentage-wise or whatever. But it hits part 2, and it really starts to pick up. And then it hits part 3, and I read that in a day. But the beginning just made it so disappointing because I did not want to finish it. Though the psychological factors were on point. Number 6 was, sadly, Bewitching by Alex Flynn. If you don't know, Alex Flynn is one of my favorite authors ever. The antagonist in this book was too much of an antagonist. There was nothing about her that I could like. And I detested her to the point that it was difficult for me to read it. Because whenever she would come in and be involved in a scene, I was like, oh my gosh, and I'd have to put it down because she was so bad. That's the main problem I had with this book. And then also there's a couple of like short stories that are thrown in here. I have no idea the relevance to the story. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This book is nonfiction, which is probably the reason I didn't like it. Not a whole lot to say about it, except I was very bored. It was half the history of Henrietta Lacks and her life, and then the other half was scientific stuff. And when it started talking science, man, I zoned out. It took me a whole month. I'm not kidding. I didn't read a single other book. I was working at camp, which makes it hard to read, but it took me a whole entire month to read this book. I just didn't really like it very much. Number 4 on my list, The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. Okay, you know how like so much of the movie is about Noah and Allie's teenage relationship? In this, it is 2 paragraphs and Allie doesn't even have a name yet. He's like, I met this girl, we did some things, I fell in love, she left. That's it. It's like 2 paragraphs, maybe even less than 2 paragraphs. And then the first half of the book is that night where Allie comes to visit Noah and they're like grown up and there's like tension and it's weird. And then the second half of the book is the hospital when Allie has dementia and Noah is sad. That's the book. Very, very disappointing. Don't read it. Just watch the movie 7 times. And don't read the book because it's not worth it. Number 3 is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I read this when I had my wisdom teeth out. I was already in a bad mood because I hated having my wisdom teeth out. Sorry. The main character is immature. The love triangle is creepy. And the story just didn't have a whole lot of anything. It just kind of... Yeah. Not a huge fan. Number 2, which is almost number 1. Number 1 and number 2 are like 0.1 difference because I just really hated both of them. Number 2 was Stolen by Lucy Christopher. One of the most boring books I have ever read in my whole entire life. It was so slow. It took forever and ever and ever, and then we got to a point where I was like, phoom. But like I said earlier, that doesn't do it for me. It was so slow and so ridiculously boring, and it didn't have a likable main character. I did not like the main character at all. God, it was awful. And then I'll give some kudos real quick. Stockholm Syndrome is an aspect of this book, and it was written in perfectly. That's the only reason that this book got 2 stars. It got any stars at all because Stockholm Syndrome was perfect, and it really affected me, and I feel like a victim, kind of, because it worked so well. That was good. The rest of it was absolutely terrible, in my opinion. Here we are, the number 1 book that Veronica hated the most in 2014. Actually, sorry, the title was most disappointing. I just didn't like it, okay? But I was also incredibly disappointed by it. And that is Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. Whoa! She just fired some shots, didn't she? Okay. I didn't finish this book. I never don't finish books. I could not finish this because I hated it so much. I love Stephanie Perkins. I love Anna and Lola, so I expected so much from Isla. And then all it was an annoying main character. And then Josh, who was my favorite character in Anna, who is not acting at all like Josh anymore. He's some kind of new Josh that I don't really like. And there is no romance with these two. It's just sexual tension. That's all it is. It's their hormones raging because they're in high school. And they're just like, I just want to kiss you. I want to run off to Barcelona when we've been dating for a week and we're going to, do things. And on page 98, she's like, this is what it feels like to fall in love. And I'm like, no, it's not, because we're on page 98 of the book. You're not falling in love yet. I gotta calm myself down. I gotta calm down. I don't know if it's because right before Isla, I read like 5 contemporary books or what, but when I got there, I was just so done. There might come a day that I will try to reread this, but it will have to be years down the road, because right now I am just so mad at that book. And earlier, Anna was on my favorites list, and it was almost hard for me to talk positively about it because all I can think about is Isla and how much I hated it. Whew. Okay, now that you saw a side of Veronica that you've never seen before, the really heated, passionate side, I'm going to go out quietly. I'm very sorry that you had to see that side of me, but I was very disappointed by those 10 books. I would like to hear your thoughts, very much so, because I know that they're probably very different from mine, and I'd just like to talk about it. I love you all. Thanks for putting up with my craziness, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!